Disabilities Issues and Updates on BCTV is supported by the Berks County Center for Independent Living, Abilities in Motion.
Good morning. Welcome to Disability Issues and Updates, brought to you by Abilities in Motion, the Center for Independent Living for Berks County. I'm your host, Ed Granger, and I'm the Independent Living Services Program Director at Abilities in Motion. As a Center for Independent Living, one of the focus areas for the services and supports that AIM provides is the challenge of serving rural communities, people in rural parts of Berks County. My guest today, Jim Reese, currently serves rural communities in Berks County in the northeastern part of the county as the Executive Director of Friends Inc. Community Services. Jim, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Ed. I appreciate the invitation and look forward to talking with you.
Well, let's kind of start with the obvious. Tell us a little bit about Friends Inc. Community Services and what you do there personally and what you do to serve the community.
Wonderful. I'm the Executive Director. Friend Inc. has been serving the northeast part of the county for over 40 years. We primarily are the food provider up there, running a number of different pantries. And we also provide some social support, case management services on the other side of that.
And so what is your location there? Are you mainly out in the community, or do you have a place that people can come in to receive services?
Yeah, our main agency is located on Noble Street. If you are familiar with Renegers up there, which I guess is the landmark, once you get outside of town, there's the university and then there's Renegers, and those are your landmarks up there. We're right next door to that on the right-hand side as you're heading out of town. And we do our main pantry out of there, and our case manager also works out of our offices there.
Okay, and that's in Kutztown?
It is.
And how many staff do you have?
We have a mighty staff of 3.5. So there's myself.
I actually know that feeling.
So do you? Yeah.
We have a small but mighty staff as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. There are 3.5 of us, but of course we couldn't do what we do without an enormous very deeply committed volunteer group. I think we had over 2,500 hours of time volunteered last year. So that makes it work. But there's myself as the Executive Director.
And I'm guessing that as the Executive Director with a small but mighty staff, you wear more than just that Executive Director hat.
Yeah, you know how that works.
I do.
You know, so we have a woman by the name of Alex. She's an MSW. She's our case manager. She handles that side of the shop. People who need some, catching up on a little bit of rent, got behind on the electric bill. They've suffered, a temporary but kind of traumatic life event. Where they're just being squeezed. And we work with them, Alex will work with them to make sure that it's not a recurring problem, right? Try and make sure that, whatever's at play, the issues at play, we can get that resolved.
You're not just putting a Band-Aid on it that's going to need to be put on again the next month.
Correct. That doesn't do anybody any good. So that's what she does, and will help people. She's also the one that will do the warm handoff or referral into other agencies for things that we don't do. And then there's Kathy. I guess the easiest way, she does everything else. Okay, so she is the volunteer coordinator. She has the history of the agency in her head. She's been around for a couple of decades. Does wonderful work. Coordinates volunteers. Coordinates our charity events. She is also the primary pantry person. We put over 300,000 pounds of food on family tables last year.
That's phenomenal.
It's a lot, and I know we're going to talk about you had opened the show by talking about the kind of the mysteries of the rural world and what the challenges are in meeting that. But it's just a phenomenal number when you think about you could drive for an hour up there and not see anybody,
Right.
you know. So so that does present some challenges there.
And challenges for people to get to you as well, given transportation challenges. So not only you getting out in the community, but them finding you and getting to where you are.
Yeah, and you know, one of those challenges is certainly awareness, right? If you are in a dense, media-centric location, it's a little easier. Word of mouth and marketing events kind of tend to have a little bit more travel to them because there's just this density. It's a little bit harder when you get up where people are not living right next door to each other. You know, when there's a 5-generational 400-acre farm, and then you get to the next house, it becomes a little bit more challenging. But that's
So how do you get the word out about what you do? Obviously, there is that word of mouth piece, but you can't just you can't just turn the lights on in the morning and
No.
expect people to flock there.
well, I'll do things like BCTV, which helps. It helps. It gets us out to an audience that I might not otherwise find. We do marketing. We do word of mouth. We have a very strong faith-based support group up there. So we are working with churches, their congregations, speaking to them. We do traditional marketing. We will drop an ad. We'll get a promotional piece in Berks County Living. We have the Patriot, which is the newspaper that serves the Northeast. It's part of the Reading Eagle family,
Right.
or whatever national family they are now. Very kind to us in terms of helping to tell our story. And then there's just you wear holes in your shoes. You get out
Right.
there and tap people on the shoulder and say, hey,
So are there other challenges to serving rural communities? You talked about the transportation issue, and just the geographical challenges. But what do you find are some of just the challenges of like not being in that sort of denser sort of population area?
Well, transportation is certainly one of it. There is no public transportation. So many, I won't say most, many people have transportation because that's the only way you can get from point A to point B. But for those without, or folks with disabilities, whether those be temporary, permanent, we deal with, very much with an aging population up there. And that transportation issue becomes really critical, particularly if that person without transportation, it may be a senior, living in some subsidized housing. They may be on disability. We have a lot of those. Without that extra help or assistance or kindness, if you will, getting to that person is challenging because we also don't know about them, right? Unless
Right.
someone takes the time to tell us, or a pastor from a local church says, hey, I have a parishioner who is homebound right now. Food is usually not an issue, but it is right now. Can we work something out?
Do you find that people are usually willing to ask for help and accept help?
No. people don't do that. People, at least not initially, because, particularly and maybe you've found this with certain things that, we had the needs that existed before the pandemic. The pandemic kind of heightened the critical nature of needs in general. And then, we've come out of that, and now we've got this inflationary impact. And meanwhile, all of the things that happen to people in rural areas. So my experience is that people will say, somebody else needs it more than me, right? And we're seeing an increase, 25% increase in new new families that are coming through the food pantry, our main food pantry. And I think some of those people were the people who said, somebody needs it more than me, we'll figure it out, we'll cut back, we may not be able to do everything put everything on the table that we used to put on the table, and now they can't do that, right? And so we're getting some of that, and there's also, there's cultural influence still in that part. I mentioned that there are farms that have been in families for 200 years, and there's that's the backbreaking agricultural work that goes on, and there's a pride in that, where and maybe a little bit of that Germanic influence that says we don't talk about these things.
Okay.
It's hard enough to talk about them around the table.
Right.
We're certainly not going to go out into the community and talk about what our failings are, or what perceived failings,
Right.
wellness is. So we you get there, and I think you might agree that we get there one person at a time.
Sure.
Right, and create that level of trust, and that it's okay. All these other people that are here are you.
And we do the same thing. I mean, just in terms of that need to focus on building relationships, whether that's relationships with individuals we serve, whether it's other people in the community gatekeepers, other organizations, like that relationship building work is like so important to be able to make sure everybody understands how to do that work. It's not, if you haven't done it before, knowing how to ask the right questions and the way to ask them, and how to give people space, is not always easy to do.
Yeah, there is that art of empathy, right? I can be sympathetic to someone and feel bad for them, but if I'm empathetic, I'm there with you, and I'm going to take a little bit more time, and we're gonna develop that trust that really has to be there in order for services to be provided or continue.
When you do get requests that come into you, what are the most common things that people are looking for in terms of like the basic sort of information and referral services that sort of all of us in this sort of field provide?
Yeah, our main thing, when we're known for food. So we operate our main pantry. We operate 5 days a month. It's self-service, so people come in. If they're registered, they just check in with Kathy. They grab a shopping cart. They go back into the pantry. There's a host of volunteers back there that can help them. But that way, if pork is not in my diet, then I'm not going to wind up with pork in the prepackaged box that I get. If my child is allergic to peaches, I'm not going to take peaches. I'll take pears or plums or something else. So they get a chance to, or if there's dietary restrictions, we try and work with those and accommodate that. Very heavy on fresh and wholesome food. So we're kind of blessed being in that part of the county where it is all around us, and we do get seasonal donations, which helps a great deal. And at those times where that's or off season when it's not so available, we'll go out and buy it so that we can get that fresh into a family's diet. We probably there's 300, 400 people who are served a month when they come through, and their pets.
Okay.
So we have a pet pantry.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So we actually are putting
for any pet, or there's some limits on which pets?
Well, cats and dogs right
Okay.
now. We haven't quite gotten to the ferret inventory yet. Found ferret food or rabbit food, but cats and dogs, we're helping to feed 500.
Wow.
A little over 500 a month in that, and pets are family too.
Sure.
So we got to take care of them.
Absolutely. Well, I just kind of a follow up to that point about relationship building is, when it comes to information and referral, and you're referring people to someplace else for help because it's not something you do. And we've kind of talked about this a little bit before, but the importance of a warm handoff.
Yes.
What does that look like for you?
It's picking up the phone. It's having an established network of other agencies that we work with. The Area Office of Aging, Berks Encore, are great resources for our older population. We can help people apply for medical assistance,
Okay.
SNAP, LIHEAP, which is energy assistance. And Alex will do that directly with them. SATE has a wonderful system called Compass that is designed for the layperson to be able to do it at home. And it's it's very intuitive. But if you don't have the technical chops or you're intimidated by anything
Right.
called state, Alex will just interview them, even over the phone, and take them right through that. And then it'll tell you what documentation is needed and those sorts of things.
Right.
So we're also part of Tower Health has a community medical referral system. I think the software is WellSky or something.
Yes.
Which is kind of agency to agency.
Yes, that's the Healthify
Yes.
referral network.
Yes. So we recently became involved in that. That's a step down from a warm handoff. But if you can't get someone on the phone, for a warm handoff to work, someone has to answer the phone.
Right.
Right? That doesn't always happen.
Hopefully someone who knows what services that their own organization provides,
yes,
which isn't always the case.
It isn't always the case. You know, there's turnover, and you
Sure,
know,
that's just it.
People
It's-
people have to learn.
It's part of the world we live in.
It is. It is. So the preferred method is to pick up the phone, is to talk to a case manager on the other end and say, hey, I have this client who is experiencing this and is looking for that.
Okay.
Absent that, you still want a way to be able to initiate that contact without, there's responsibility that's put on the client end of that.
Yes.
Here's a phone number, you need to follow up with this.
And as a Center for Independent Living, obviously, we're big on that. We're here to support you. But if the experience of interacting with us doesn't leave you feeling more empowered or more independent, then we haven't really done our jobs.
Right, agreed. So, that's life skill stuff too,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
this is probably not the last time I'm going to have a problem. And if I have initiated with the help of someone, but if I've initiated that and I see that that can bear fruit, then next time I'm presented with something, even if it doesn't quite look like this, I may be more likely to initiate that contact on my own.
And there are some basic things they can do to go with it, like have your questions prepared ahead of time. Maybe do some role play with somebody you know and trust, and just little tricks that you can prepare people for having those interactions.
Exactly.
What are some of the misperceptions that people have about rural communities or people who live in rural areas?
There aren't any problems. They don't, because you don't see it, right? With a density of an urban area like Reading, even some of the ring communities around it, you can see it. Looking out the window onto the street, and you can see it. You don't see it up there, right? Because it's down the lane, or it's behind the facade of what looks like a fully functioning mobile home, which isn't. There's no running water. There's the roof leaks. So it's part of the awareness. Part of the story is not just trying to identify the client in need, but it's also it's also creating awareness in the general public that the human condition is the human condition, right? It is, and we all can have poverty happen, have a disability happen,
Right.
whether that's temporary, permanent, medical issues, domestic abuse, low income, lack of housing. I won't even say lack of affordable housing. I mean, that's obvious, but just there's no inventory.
Okay.
If we have, when we deal with an elderly client or someone who's getting into that space, subsidized, it's 2-3 years. What do you do? And we've got people who have been on Social Security. I know you know this, that have been on it for 20, 25 years. when $900,000 could get you somewhere, right? It doesn't get you. You can't, if you lose your space and you have $900, that's your income, and then you have to wait 2.5 years. We've got 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments in Kutztown going for $1,300, $1,400, everywhere, right? I mean, it's everywhere.
Sure.
So,
Well, and every time there's a cost of living increase, the rents unsurprisingly go up to match. So you can never sort of get ahead.
You can't get ahead. You can't get ahead. So it's that awareness that the human condition exists where the human is. It's just harder to see up there.
How about the people with disabilities that you serve or that you see? What are some of the barriers that people with disabilities in Northeast Berks County might face?
We've talked about transportation. That's certainly that. Access to services. We are kind of it. It's a service desert. It's a social service desert up there. You have medical practices. You have offices, physician offices, that sort of thing. But if you need any other sort of help or assistance, you are either going to Reading or you're going to Allentown.
Okay.
Because we run up
Sure.
right onto the Lehigh
Yeah.
border.
For some reason, I've noticed this too. People's lives don't stop at county borders.
Yeah. The zip code qualifier is one of the more frustrating things that we run into because we do some work up in Kempton, which is kind of the North Pole of Berks County. But people who live in Albany Township, Kempton, some of them live in Lehigh.
Right.
Even though their address. So, that is a thing that will get individuals caught up in the red tape of help, if we can call it that.
So one of the things that we do as a Center for Independent Living, and we at our core, we're sort of an advocacy organization. That's kind of something that we pride ourselves on, both in terms of systems advocacy, trying to impact the systems that people have to deal with, but also self-advocacy, helping people advocate better for themselves. How do you sort of advocate for the people in your community as an organization, or how do you try to help them have a voice for themselves?
I think that on a couple of different levels. One is sitting at the table where things like that get talked about. I have had a meeting or two with one of the commissioners, Commissioner Leinbach, trying to, with Berks Encore, met recently with the Area Office on Aging, just kind of being the rural advocate and reminding people that, and these people don't need to be reminded, but that when it comes to services and when it comes to money, right, which is how, at the end of the day, right, the only way that any of this stuff gets done is if somebody's writing you a check or funding you in some way, right? That there is a need. There's a tremendous need that exists out there. And yes, no, you can't see it, and maybe you don't travel through that part of the county. Intellectually, you know it. As rational adults, we know that these things exist. But you get into the day-to-day, right? And you get consumed by your world and the problems and issues that are laying on your desk. This stuff over here, it's out of sight, out of mind.
Sure.
And that's just a function of being human and busy, right? And kind of paying attention to your core constituency. So being at the table, raising your hand once in a while, say, hey, over here.
Yeah, and that mission creep, the temptation to get outside your core mission can be very real sometimes too, especially when there's money attached to that. And that's one of those things where you just have to remind yourself.
Yeah,
what
we
you're there
don't
for.
we don't do that.
Right.
Absolutely. But what we do, I think one of our key capabilities is collaboration. And we have on-site, we've brought on-site into our agency building an advocate from Safe Berks, who's doing education and advocacy up there, working with police departments on how to handle that, what the person's right is in that domestic situation. And they've had some great success with that. And then counselors from Family Guidance Center who are talking to 45 people a month up there. And then there's also an agency called Maternal and Family Health Services who do, I think they're out of Scranton, but they do a whole bunch of things. But out of our building, they handle the WIC program,
Okay.
Women's, Infant, and Children.
Sure.
And they're benefiting between mom and kids. There's 300 individuals a month
Wow.
that are benefiting out of that.
So as we kind of wind down here, what are some things that you're kind of most proud of in terms of the work that you've been able to do and that you're doing?
I think it's the totality of the service. We've talked about the main pantry that we do on a self-select, which makes it a more human experience. Talked about the pets that we feed. We also founded and operate the Kutztown University Student Food Pantry.
Okay.
That was founded by one of our board members, local pastor, probably 8-9 years ago.
And that might be a misconception of some people that college students don't have nutrition
Horrible misconception. It's a national.
Yes.
It's a national disgrace. Hunger in America is a national disgrace. But we're getting 400 visits a month out of that pantry. We do a mobile market up at Huff's Church where we go up. We meet Helping Harvest. They throw some pallets on the ground. We throw some pallets on the ground and handle 40, 50 cars a month up there. And then we do what we call emergency food, which is a request for food that isn't on a pantry day. Sometimes it is an emergency. Other times it's just more urgent or lack of planning. But we will pack a box, ask about dietary restrictions. And then we also, I think we throw a couple of really good charity events a year.
Great.
The next one coming up in second week in August.
Yes, by all means, this is your chance to plug.
Break the Cycle of Poverty, which is a very clever name. I wish I could take credit for it. But there's a 62, 40, 25, and 10-mile rides. They're GPSed. We have ride support. There's food at the end of that. That part of the county is absolutely gorgeous at that time of the year. Corn is bright green, 10 feet tall. And Hannah Violet Trio is going to play this year. So we got a little fun and a little beer
Sure.
and a little food at the end of that, all for a good cause. And you can find that at friendinc.org, which is our website.
So how about a perfect opportunity for you to just share your general contact information? If people want to know more or they live in that area and they want to connect with you, how do they do that?
You can stop by if you're out wandering around Kutztown. Always glad to open the door for you. The best way, because the individual contact information for myself, Kathy, Alex, is right on the website. It's very navigable. So it's friendinc, INC, all one word, .org. And you can find out anything, and you can also donate directly from there.
Fantastic. Well, Jim Reese, Executive Director of Friend and Community Services, thank you so much for being our guest and sharing about the communities that you serve. You're doing fantastic work. Just keep up the good work.
I certainly appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome.
Disabilities Issues and Updates on BCTV is supported by the Berks County Center for Independent Living, Abilities in Motion.